Another interesting weekend in the EFL Championship has come to a close after this Sunday afternoon's fixture, and it has been a really interesting one. There's been ups and there's been downs. There's been some magnificent results following around the grounds. We're going to get into all of that in this video. If you certain games which you want to check down in the video, then make sure you check the timestamps in the description. Make sure you can keep up to date with whichever games you want to keep up with. And if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for when my latest videos do drop. We obviously cover a wide range of Championship and League One content over the course of this season. There's also a lot of Derby County content on there as well, so if you're a Derby County fan, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Well, the first game of the weekend was a really interesting one. It was Luton Town who faced up against QPR Rob Edwards against Marty Cifuentes, and it was a really interesting game for me because Luton Town, I thought, played fairly well for the large majority of the game, but once they conceded that first goal to Madsen in that 59th minute, they just sort of fell apart. And then obviously Fry came in and picked up the second one about 3 or 4 minutes later, and it was sort of in that moment where Luton Town and Rob Edwards sort of didn't know what to do, and they made a couple of changes but didn't really make any difference to the performance. And it's really unfortunate for Luton Town. I don't yet think they've picked up a win during this Championship campaign, as obviously we are only at round 4. There's still a long way to go. I think the season where Burnley got promoted, I think they were mid-table at round 12, round 13. So obviously there is possibilities to still go up. Doesn't matter, like, so long as you go on a couple of runs, you'll be alright in this division. So Luton Town unfortunately came away without any points from this game. QPR played really well. You can look at sort of the momentum chart and things like that, and you can see that QPR just capitalised on their two main opportunities. 56% possession to 44% possession, 1.47 XG in Luton's favour to 0.86. Both teams having 11 shots and creating two big chances. Now, if we go and look at the two lineups, I think there's a lot of quality in both of these sides. You look at the likes of Elijah Adebayo, you look at Morris, you look at Taif Chong, you look at Shandon Baptiste, and obviously they've just spent a big chunk of change on McGuinness at centre half as well. You then obviously go and look at this team for QPR. You look at the likes of Dembele, who's a really good player, Clark Salter, really good player. You've obviously got Dunn, that's currently playing a bit out of position at right back, and they've just brought in a right back, so it's going to be interesting to see how it progresses for obviously QPR and for Luton Town over the course of this season. The result was a surprising one, but it's one which, when you look at how both teams have done recently, it sort of makes sense. Obviously Dembele was a shining light for QPR, and the two best players really for Luton Town were that of Baptiste and Chong, and I feel like the likes of Doherty haven't quite done enough for Luton Town so far, and obviously they're going to have to progress as the season goes on. Next up then, Burnley faced Blackburn Rovers, and it ended as a 1-1 draw with both games coming in that first half. Now, it was really interesting, this one, because Foster, a player who was potentially on the way out at points during deadline day, picked up a goal 10 minutes in. I think there was an opportunity for him to move to Ipswich Town, which didn't quite come to fruition. And you then obviously look at Blackburn Rovers, and I'm not sure if any of you have seen the goal that Andy Weimann scored, but it was an absolute cracker. Now, they did play the final half an hour with 10 men, Blackburn, and it's one of those for me where I think Burnley are still sort of coming to terms with who they are. Obviously, over the course of the last probably week of the transfer window, they lost a ton of quality and a ton of players. Yes, don't get me wrong, they brought in some quality as well, but not quite the same level as what they lost. Now, if we do look at the statistics of this game, I think it's as you would expect, with Burnley dominating the ball under Scott Parker and John Eustace. 26% possession for Blackburn Rovers, 0.31 XG to 0.85. 15 shots to 10, Burnley having two big chances. Now, if you look at the two lineups for the two sides, and you can see the difference in quality. You look at the likes of Hannibal in behind Foster, you look at Brownhill, Lorient, Joe Worrell at the back, you've got James Trafford in between the sticks. It's some really, really good quality that Scott Parker's got available to him on the pitch. And also, even if you look at the bench, you look at the likes of Saramento, you look at Manuel Benson, you look at Jay Rodriguez, some really, really, really good quality. And you look at the team for Blackburn, I'm not saying they don't have quality on their side. I think the likes of Guy, Dolan and Vyman are very, very good players. I even like Lewis Travis as well. But there's a lot more sort of top-end quality for Burnley, and I think they'll be disappointed to spend half an hour against 10 men and not come away with more than a point. But it's one of those games. I'm pretty sure Burnley vs Blackburn's a derby, and it's a really interesting one because it usually seems to be Blackburn who are on the receiving end of defeats, but this time around Blackburn and Burnley end on as even. Next up then you have Cardiff City and Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough have got themselves back on track essentially after two disappointing results versus two of the newly promoted sides over the course of the last few games, and obviously the 1-0 defeat to Derby, and then I believe they drew 2-2 with Pompey. I've gone through all those games in previous videos, so if you want to go and check out other game weeks, go and check them out on my channel. But obviously this one, it's a Matt Clark goal after 55 minutes and then a Ramsey own goal after 82, and I think for Middlesbrough this is sort of, they've got to turn things around, especially if they want to be in that promotion battle. I know I spoke about Luton Town earlier on in this video, and I sort of said, don't get me wrong, you can still go up, even if you have a slow start. Obviously, I think it was Burnley under Vincent Kompany, who I think at one were like 12th after like 12 games or something like that, and then ended up going up, I believe, as champions, if I remember rightly, that season. And this could be exactly the same for the likes of Middlesbrough, the likes of Luton, who haven't quite started as well as they probably would have expected, but they've got to find a rhythm now, and Middlesbrough come away with this one with a 2-0 win. You obviously look at the performance, and it's nothing special. It's a 50-50 game, really, when it comes to possession. There's not that much in it. 0.55 to 0.81 XG, 12 shots to 10 for both sides. Now, obviously, it's one of those really where Middlesbrough took their opportunities, and obviously the own goal as well, which sort of makes it a bit more of an impossible task, especially when that own goal comes for Cardiff City, because when that Ramsey own goal goes in with 82 minutes to go, well, with 8 minutes to go, sorry, plus stoppage time, it sort of closes the door on a real comeback unless you're sort of really, really good. And then you look at the performances, Robertson, you look at Chambers, Jakub Miete, what's his name? Is that his name? Yeah, from Reading. I think that's the guy. And it's not quite what you want, is it? And then obviously you look at the performances of Middlesbrough. You look at the likes of Clark. You look at Hackney and Morris in midfield. You look at Finn Azaz. Some really, really good performers for them. And obviously there was a lot of talk about Latte La going out for Middlesbrough, and I don't even think he was involved. Oh no, he came off the bench, my apologies. But it's one of those for me where they sort of had to prepare for life without him. Obviously the move never came to fruition, but it's a disappointing one for Cardiff City in the end, and I think Middlesbrough and Michael Carrick will take those positives into the international break and hopefully come out the other side with much better performances. Norwich City take 3 points from the Coventry City Building Society Arena, and it was a science goal after 49 minutes, and this game is sort of what I think will be a playoff contending game towards the back end of the season. I think having it so early sort of navigates sort of the importance of this game, because obviously at this point of the season no one's sort of settled into where they're going to be, especially when we get into some other games later down the line in this video, because there's been some really, really good performances this weekend, and I think this Norwich one is sort of not necessarily the performance where you think, oh, these are proper challenges. It's a performance where you go, well, that's sort of a champions win. And I'm not saying they're going to come away and be champions of the division this year, but you've got those teams who win games when they're not necessarily at their best, and I think this is certainly one of them. 57% possession, but ultimately created the worst chances with 0.40 xg, 9 shots for Norwich, 14 for Coventry, 1.5 xg for Coventry as well. And I think when you look at these two sides in the lineups, I think they're both really good sides for this division. You look at the likes of Sargent, Sainz, McLean, Nunes, some really, really good performers in this division. You also then look at the Coventry City side where you've got Sakamoto, Rudani, Sims, Wright, some really, really good players. You've also got the likes of Eccles, Laboutier as well. And it's one of those for me where I think both of these two sides are really, really good sides in this division, and they're certainly going to be up there challenging for those playoff positions. And I think obviously you look at the players that both teams are bringing off the bench, and they're both highly effective benches as well. So it's one of those for me where Mark Robins and Thurup are certainly going to have to sort of figure out what the best thing is for their teams across the course of the season. I think Norwich City obviously come away with the win in this game, and it wasn't necessarily their best performance, but it was certainly one which makes you take notice when you pick up a win in these circumstances. Pretty similar to the likes of Derby County and Blackburn picking up a point with 26% possession, Derby versus Middlesbrough. Like, they're statement wins. Even when you're not playing your best, you pick up those wins, and they're the important ones come the end of the season, because if you win your games where you're good and you can also win some when you're bad, then it's a really, really good look for any team in this division. And what I would like to call the shock of the weekend, Derby County hosted Bristol City at Pride Park Stadium, and what a performance this Derby County side put in. Now, if you haven't done so already, go and check out my matchday vlog. I'll make sure it's tagged at this point in the video, because Derby County were excellent, and I spoke about it in that video about the importance of the midfield that Derby County had, and the importance of taking those chances when we got them. And the goals came from two midfielders in Kenzo Holdmine and David Ozzo, and then obviously Caden Jackson popped up with a throw-in routine for a goal just inside the box, and it was a 3-0 win. And after probably the first 20-25 minutes, Derby County sort of could have gone into their shell, because Bristol City at points were in really, really good positions and had some really, really good opportunities. But especially after Kenzo Holdmine got that goal, it was a completely different performance for Derby County, and they sort of really flipped the screw on what they were capable of. And they had some really good opportunities before then, and it could have been 5 or 6-0 honestly, and on another day maybe it would have been. But it's one of those for me where Bristol City didn't seem to turn up. Now, I'm not sure if that's because Derby County were just brilliant, or if it's because Bristol City were just really, really bad. Now, I know a lot of Bristol fans have sort of said Derby County deserved it, and obviously you can't argue it. And we'll look at the numbers now, and I think you look at the numbers in terms of possession and expected goals and things like that, and I've said countless times across my social media and across these videos that you can't always win games with 36% possession if you're not affecting it in the opposite end of the pitch. And the big thing for me in this game, which was different to Derby County versus Watford, Derby versus Middlesbrough, Derby versus Blackburn, is we actually made things happen in possession, and the 1.67 xg shows that. 19 total shots, 4 big chances. Mendes Lang lobbed the goalkeeper and then hit the post. There was another couple of opportunities where their keeper made some really good saves as well. And it's one of those for me where Derby County could have come away from this game 6-0. And we look at the performance from the players on the pitch, and Zetterstrom played an absolute blinder, made some unbelievable saves. Curtis Nelson, Cashin, Callum Elder, Ryan Niambi were brilliant at the back. The midfield three of Ozzo, Adams and Kenzo Holdmine were really, really good at being able to rotate and pick up the right positions, and shut down the likes of Max Bird and Jason Knight throughout the game, and even the likes of Scotty Twine, who didn't really touch the ball and got really, really frustrated with himself. I thought Jerry Yates and the two wide men of Mendes Lang and Caden Jackson were absolutely excellent in this game too. Jerry Yates with some brilliant build-up play, Caden Jackson and Mendes Lang working those wide areas really, really well on both the defensive end and the attacking end. So it's going to be really interesting to see how sort of this season progresses for Derby County now, because they've set out a statement with that performance, and that's something that they've got to hold on to as the season progresses. And you look at some of the players in this Bristol City side. Bird and Knight are both ex-Derby and didn't really turn up. You look at obviously the players that they've got in the team as well. You look at the likes of Naismith, Williams, Sykes, Armstrong, Twine, and obviously Twine's quite an expensive signing for them, and so's Armstrong. So it's really interesting to see that they weren't able to get the better of Derby County, but Derby County showed what a Paul Warne side can do, and if Paul Warne can continue these sorts of performances throughout the season, obviously they face up against Cardiff on the game back from the international break, then I think Derby County will be in a really, really good place come the end of this season. Now, after speculation of Joel Piroux heading out for Gustavo Hamer, that ended up not happening, and Piroux picked up a goal in the 81st minute. Joseph picked one in the 63rd to come away 2-0 winners at Elland Road versus Hull City. Really, really interesting game, this one. I think Leeds United are certainly pushing for those promotion positions come the end of the season. I think Hull City will sort of be in that 7th to 10th area, maybe battling for those final playoff places. And I think it's a really, really good performance by Leeds. I think they sort of had control of the game with their possession. Obviously, it's not a massive difference between 55 and 45% possession, but what Leeds did with their possession, pretty similar to Derby in the previous part, was excellent. 1.46 XG in 16 shots. It's nearly double the shots that of Hull City, whereas Hull City sort of struggled in this one to sort of make things happen. You look at obviously the sides for both sides. You've got Nonto, Aronson, Joseph, Solomon, Ampadu, some really, really good players for Leeds United. You look at the side for Hull City, you've got Giles, who's ended up staying. You've also got the likes of, who have you got for Hull City? Because their big names have disappeared, and suddenly they don't quite look like that team that they've looked like over the past few seasons with Liam Rosenior at the helm. And it is going to be interesting to see how it progresses. Obviously, they've brought in Casey Palmer, they've brought in Mason Burstow, and hopefully they're going to have an impact on the season. But as of right now, they're not yet been able to do so. Obviously, Casey Palmer only came in, I think it was a couple of days before this game. So it's an interesting one, it really is. And I think Leeds United come away from this with obviously masses of confidence, and they'll come out of the international break in a really, really good position. Now, if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell down below to stay tuned for all of my latest Derby County and EFL Championship and League One content that's heading your way across the course of this season. Let me know your thoughts on your team's performance down in the comments. I try and reply to every single one, so make sure you leave your thoughts down below and hit that subscribe button. Now we head into Millwall versus Sheffield Wednesday, and you only have to look at Sheffield Wednesday's recent results to realise that maybe they're not that playoff contender that people assumed they were after the Plymouth result. You take a 3-0 win from Millwall, who have struggled so far this season, especially to score goals. You've got Coburn, Watmore and Cooper picking up the 3 goals, 58, 71 and 88 minutes respectively. Really, really good performance by Millwall, and it's another game similar to Derby County where you have a lack of possession, but you do a lot with what you have. And these are the performances that I want from those teams that are sitting in and being rugged and being good defensively. I want them to be impactful in possession, and Millwall have done it today. Blackburn did it versus Burnley, and Derby County did it versus Bristol City. 2.78 XG off 18 shots, 4 big chances, in comparison to Sheffield Wednesday's 61% possession, 0.16 XG and 4 total shots. It's a real disappointing performance for Sheffield Wednesday, and they have to be disappointed. And you look at how they started the season and how they are doing right now, and you have to be disappointed. What has happened for them since that opening day, and I don't really know what's changed for Danny Roll. Obviously they've brought in Shay Charles, they've brought in a couple of other players as well throughout the transfer window, and they just haven't quite hit that same form. Now, whether it was more a case of obviously Plymouth Argyle struggling to get to grips with their style at the start of the season, which when you look at their other performances, that could totally check out. It's one of those for me where Sheffield Wednesday have got to find better performances. Now, Neil Harris has been talking about wanting more up front, and they obviously brought in Macaulay Langstaff. They've now brought in Josh Coburn, whatever, from Middlesbrough. Really good signing in my opinion. I'd have taken him at Derby County. And they've obviously got some really good players in there, like the likes of Tanganga, Honeyman, Saville, some really, really good players. And obviously Sheffield Wednesday just weren't able to compete when they had possession. They weren't able to make things happen, and that's why they had 4 shots off 61% possession. It's a disappointing performance for Sheffield Wednesday, but Millwall will run away with their heads held high. Oxford United take another win this season, 3-1 versus Preston North End. And yes, Preston North End have a sending off. Shall we just take a look at who that was to? Which player got the sending off? Who was it? It was Lindsay in the back line. Now, we'll come back to obviously the players and the lineups and things like that again, but this Oxford United side have competed, in my opinion, in every game they've been in so far this season. Harris has picked up another goal, Goodrum's picked up a goal, Lee's picked up a goal. It's really, really good, but the problem for Preston North End is they took the lead after just 3 minutes. It's a reminder of Derby County versus Watford. Took the lead after 3 minutes, ended up losing 2-1, and it's one of those where, yes, Preston competed, but Oxford United were just more clinical, and then obviously they picked up the sending off in the middle of the second half, just before that second goal, and it really did cost them in the end. And it's disappointing really to see Paul Heckingbottom lose this game, but you can obviously add the caveats of 10 men, but that doesn't matter come the end of the season. Now, if we look at both sides, I think what's really interesting to see is the likes of Kioso, the likes of Phillips sort of bleeding into this team at Oxford United. You've obviously got Rodriguez, McKecker and Brannigan in that midfield three. Harris has done really, really well to make that step up to championship level, and you look at off the bench as well, look at the players they're bringing in: Sariki Dembele, Gregory Lee, Will Volks, Idris Al-Mazouni, and you look at the players that they're being able to leave out, the likes of Owen Dale, Malcolm Ebioe, Dane Scarlett and Louis Sibley. And it's really interesting to see how both of these teams are working under their management structures as they're in championship campaigns. And obviously Oxford weren't necessarily a brilliant team in League One, but they're certainly shown themselves to be a really good team in the championship so far. Now obviously Preston North End under new management, and Paul Heckingbottom will probably be disappointed to lose 3-1, but with the sending off, conceding once afterwards, it is a bit disappointing. Obviously they'll have hoped for more heading into the game, obviously before they kicked off, but it's one of those for me where these games happen across the course of a season, and we just have to hope that Preston North End don't suffer anymore. Plymouth Argyle versus Stoke City, and Plymouth take another loss in this championship campaign, and it's Stoke City this time who take the 3 points from home park. Now, if we look at the numbers behind the game, 56% possession to 44% in Plymouth's favour, and Plymouth just weren't able to be effective with their possession. 0.77 xg, 1.6 xg for Stoke City, 15 shots each, 2 big chances for that of Stoke City. Now, I heard a few of Wayne Rooney's post-match comments about struggling with the half chances and things like that, but they're not creating enough to make proper full clear-cut chances. And you look at the likes of Mumba, Edwards, you look at that forward line, that forward four who really need to be more effective, and they just really weren't. It's one of those for me where you look at the likes, you look at Whittaker and go, take a game by the scruff of the neck, win us a game, and he's been unable to do that really this season. Yes, he was the reason why they picked up a point at QPR, scoring that screamer, but that isn't enough if it only happens every now and again. Now, you look at this side for Stoke City, you look at the likes of Kumas, you look at Manhoof up front, you look at Bay and Memi. They've got some really, really good players in this team, and I really like Victor Johansson, a player who was linked with Derby County at the start of this summer, and it's really interesting to see how they're sort of progressing over the course of the start of this season, because Stephen Schumacher has got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of youngsters in this squad. You look at the likes of Emre Tezgel, and it's one of those for me where they are going to progress as the season goes on. I think the same for Plymouth Argyle, but I certainly think Plymouth Argyle are probably going to be within that relegation zone and within that relegation scrap. Stoke City will hopefully be battling for that sort of upper mid-table, but we'll have to see what happens with that. I think both managers are sort of in a bit of... I think Wayne Rooney's probably in a bit of worry about his Plymouth Argyle side. I don't quite think he has enough in his squad. You then look at Stoke City, and I think Schumacher sort of has really good moments with Stoke, and then they have some really bad ones. So it's going to be interesting to see how that progresses across the course of this season. Pompey then faced arguably what are going to be title challenges this season, Sunderland, and they were beat 3-1, and it was quite a comfortable game for Sunderland in the grand scheme of things. They scored 3 goals. First one was an own goal from Swanson after 31 minutes. Then 2 goals in like the 50 to 60th minute period from Brown and Mundell. Some really, really good performances for Sunderland. Obviously, Pompey got their goal, but it wasn't necessarily how you want to get a goal. It was an OG by 09, and if we do look at the numbers, and you can just see how good this Sunderland side is. Gave up possession to Pompey, and Pompey couldn't be effective with the ball at their feet. Only 6 shots and 0.35 xG after 55% possession. Whereas for Sunderland, it was 1.99 xG, 11 shots, 4 big chances from 45% xG. Now, it isn't a surprise looking at those numbers when you look at the two sides. You look at the likes of Patrick Roberts, you look at Mayenda, you look at Bellingham, you look at Mundell, you look at Rigg, who is going to go on to be an England international at some point, and will he still be at Sunderland by that stage? Who knows, but there's no way he can't be an England international. I think he's 17, 18 years old, and he's putting in some really, really good performances at this level, and obviously the rating doesn't quite show it for this game, and I'm sure Sunderland fans will tell me down in the comments that it probably wasn't his greatest game, but to be a starter in this division and playing 90 minutes as he has been doing for a lot of the games, I think it's really interesting to see. And you obviously look at John Mousinho's side, and it's not that they're a bad side at all, but they certainly weren't able to compete with this Sunderland side. And obviously, when you've got the players that Sunderland have got versus League One calibre players, really, for a lot of Pompey's squad, it's always going to be a bit difficult, and it's one of those for me where Pompey will live and learn from this experience. West Brom then come away 1-0 winners from the Hawthorns after hosting Swansea City. A goal just before half-time from Jason Malumbi, a really, really good goal as well. And it's one of those for me where you look at these two sides, and I am not surprised that West Brom came out on top. I think Carlos Corberán is an excellent coach. I think I've said this in every video so far, and they're always sort of in games, and they know how to create high quality chances at this level, and I think that's shown by the XG. I think if we went on XG4 for the whole division, I'm sure that West Bromwich Albion would be right up there at the top end, and it's 2.4 XG for West Brom on 18 shots and 4 big chances, 0.46 XG for Swansea off 6 total shots and 1 big chance. Now, you look at both of these sides, and I think you can see the difference in quality. You look at the likes of Madja, you look at Swift, you look at Mowat, obviously Malumbi, you look at Fallows, and obviously Grant as well. And it's a really, really good team here at West Bromwich Albion, and I think they have a lot good going for them. I'm not saying that they've got one of the best squads in the division, but they've got a really good squad for the division, and they've got probably the best coach in the division. So it's going to be interesting to see how it progresses. And the consistent theme with Swansea City is Grimes in midfield is always a really good performer. And you look at the bench usage for Swansea City, and they just don't really use it. And why that is, I don't entirely know. Maybe Luke Williams felt as if they were sort of in charge of the game and creating opportunities, and it's one of those for me where Swansea City won't live and die by this result, but they'll certainly hope that in the future they can create more chances and have more shooting opportunities heading into future games. We head now into the final game of the weekend, and Sheffield United take a 1-0 win at home versus Watford. It was an own goal after 2 minutes, and you take them. However they come, you take them. And if you look at the momentum chart, you look at the numbers behind this game as well, and I think Sheffield United deserved it. Really, really good performance by them. Created lots of high quality chances. Watford unable to do the same. I think these are the first points Watford have dropped all season, so that shows a lot about Chris Wilder's Sheffield United side. 52% possession to 48% possession, 2.02 XG, 0.77 XG for Watford. 18 shots to 7 in Sheffield United's favour, 2 big chances to 1 across the course of the game. Now, if we look at both sides, they've both got a set of really, really good players. And I think both Cleverley and Wilder would admit that they probably have two of the biggest squads in the division in terms of quality. If you also look at some of the signings that these players have brought in, the likes of Ray Saki, you look at O'Hara, you look at Watford, I think they've recently just signed, what's his name, Festi Ebeselli, former Derby County winger and wing-back. He's going to be interesting to see how he fits into Tom Cleverley's side. Don't think he was able to be on the bench. Yes, he was, but he didn't quite come on. So it'll be interesting to see how he fits into this Watford side. I assume he'll come into this position where Andrews is, and I think he'll be massively effective for Watford. Chris Wilder has got the job done here. A really, really good performance by them, and they're going to certainly be in a really good position come the end of the season. Now, we've been through all the games in the Championship. The League One review will be coming out later today. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Make sure you've hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well, and turn on that notification bell, and I'll catch you in my next video. Be sure to go and find me on TikTok, pictured here, and Twitter, pictured here. These are the places where I'll keep you all up to date with all my upcoming videos and my thoughts and feelings around the Formula 1 and football weekend.